When stars collide, the cargo hauler Horizon's Call drifted silently through the Kepler belt, its massive hull scarred from years of asteroid mining runs. Marcus Chen pressed his palm against the cool metal of the observation deck, watching chunks of ice and rock tumble past in the eternal dance of space debris. At 28, he had been running cargo between the inner colonies and the mining stations for 6 years, long enough to know that space had 1,000 ways to kill you, and most of them were boring. Today felt different, though. The ship carried more than the usual load of processed minerals and rare earth elements. Deep in the secured hold, behind layers of reinforced bulkheads and energy fields, sat their most valuable and dangerous cargo, a Cytherian prisoner of war. Marcus had never seen one of them up close. The war between humanity and the Cytherian Empire had raged for 12 years, ever since first contact had gone catastrophically wrong. Stories filtered back from the front lines painted them as ruthless warriors, tall and pale with eyes like liquid silver and an absolute dedication to their cause. They were said to be stronger than humans, faster, and utterly without mercy for those they considered inferior. The intercom crackled to life, breaking his thoughts. "Chen, get to the engine room. We've got problems." Captain Rodriguez's voice carried an edge of worry that made Marcus's stomach clench. He found the captain and chief engineer Walsh hunched over a diagnostic panel, their faces lit by angry red warning lights. The engine room hummed with an irregular rhythm that spoke of serious trouble brewing in the ship's mechanical heart. "What's the situation?" Marcus asked, pulling up his own readouts on a nearby console. "Plasma conduit breach in the primary drive system," Walsh said without looking up. "We're losing containment field strength by the hour. If we don't shut it down soon, we'll have a cascade failure that'll turn us into the galaxy's newest nebula." Marcus studied the data flowing across his screen. The numbers painted a grim picture. "How long do we have?" 6 hours, maybe 8 if we're lucky," Rodriguez replied. "Problem is, if we shut down the drive now, we're stuck. No power for life support, no thrust, no communications. We'll be a dead ship floating in the middle of nowhere." "What about the distress beacon?" "Range is too limited out here. We're 3 days from the nearest shipping lane." The captain's weathered face looked older in the harsh emergency lighting. "We need to try a cold repair. Shut everything down, fix what we can, and hope we can restart the system before our air runs out." It was a death sentence with extra steps, but Marcus nodded anyway. In space, you took the bad options over the impossible ones and hoped skill could make up the difference. The shutdown procedure took 2 hours of careful preparation. They powered down non-essential systems first, then gradually reduced power to life support until only emergency lighting remained. The ship grew cold quickly without the constant circulation of heated air, and their breath began to mist as the temperature dropped. Marcus was elbow-deep in a plasma coupling when the first explosion rocked the ship. Emergency klaxons wailed as he picked himself up off the deck, his ears ringing from the blast. Through the ship's communication system, he heard Walsh shouting about a hull breach in the forward section. "That's not random." Rodriguez's voice came through Marcus's comm unit. "Someone's shooting at us." Pirates. Of course it had to be pirates. The Kepler belt was notorious for them. Scavengers who preyed on disabled ships and asked no questions about cargo or crew. A dead ship was easy pickings, especially one carrying processed rare minerals worth a fortune on the black market. Another blast shook the Horizon's Call, and Marcus heard the distinctive whine of atmosphere escaping through punctured hull plating. They had minutes before the breach became irreparable. "Chen, get to the security hold," Rodriguez ordered. "If we're going down, I'm not leaving a Cytherian for the pirates to sell." The security section was 3 decks down and half the ship away. Marcus ran through corridors lit only by emergency strips, his breath clouding in the frigid air. Behind him, he could hear the groaning of stressed metal as the ship's structure began to fail under the assault. He reached the security hold just as another explosion rocked the ship. The blast door was designed to withstand almost anything, but the locking mechanism had failed when they lost primary power. Inside, he could see her. The Cytherian prisoner sat calmly in the center of the cell, apparently unaffected by the chaos around her. She was tall, probably close to 7 feet, with pale blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting. Her silver hair was pulled back in an intricate braid, and those legendary liquid mercury eyes fixed on him with unsettling intensity. She wore the simple gray clothing of a prisoner, but something in her posture suggested she was anything but helpless. Energy restraints circled her wrists and ankles, but they flickered weakly in the reduced power state. "Human," she said, and her voice was like music played on crystal chimes. The universal translator rendered her words in perfect standard. "Your ship is dying." "Yeah," I noticed. Marcus checked the restraint controls. The system was failing along with everything else. In a few minutes, she would be completely free. "What's your name?" She tilted her head slightly, as if the question surprised her. "I am Zara of the Third Ascendancy, Fleet Commander of the Cytherian Deep Strike Forces." A pause. "You may call me Zara." Marcus Chen, cargo pilot, and apparently the worst rescue attempt in galactic history. He tried to keep his tone light despite their situation. "The restraints are failing. I could try to reinforce them, or you could accept that we are both likely to die in the next few minutes and act accordingly." Her silver eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. "I give you my word as a warrior that I will not harm you unless you give me cause." The word of a Cytherian warrior was supposed to be absolute, according to the intelligence briefings. Marcus made a decision that would have gotten him court-martialed under normal circumstances. He released the restraints. Zara stood slowly, working feeling back into her hands. She was even more imposing on her feet, but she made no aggressive moves. Instead, she studied him with obvious curiosity. "Why?" she asked. "Because right now, you're the only other person on this ship who might know something about fixing whatever the pirates did to us." Another explosion, closer this time. "And because nobody deserves to die in a cage." Something flickered across her angular features. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. "Your species continues to confound our analysts. We're good at being unpredictable. It's one of our better qualities." Marcus gestured toward the door. "Can you help us?" Zara moved past him with fluid grace, her enhanced senses already analyzing their situation. "The atmospheric breach is in Section 7. The structural damage is extensive but not irreparable. Your immediate problem is power distribution." She was right. The pirates had targeted their fusion reactors, knowing that a disabled ship was easier prey than a destroyed one. But they had underestimated the cascade effects of their attack. "If we can reroute power from the secondary systems, we might be able to restore partial life support," Marcus said, thinking out loud. "Your people build redundancy into everything," Zara observed as they made their way through the darkened corridors. "Inefficient but resilient." "Your people build everything perfect the first time," Marcus countered. "Efficient but fragile when things go wrong." She actually smiled at that, an expression that transformed her entire face. "Perhaps that is why your species has survived as long as it has." They reached the main engineering section to find it in chaos. Plasma had vented from ruptured conduits, and several control panels had overloaded completely. Walsh was unconscious near the primary console, a nasty burn across his forehead where sparks had caught him. Zara knelt beside the injured engineer with surprising gentleness, checking his pulse and breathing. "He will live, but needs medical attention soon." Marcus was already working on the power distribution panel, his fingers flying over controls he could operate blindfolded. The ship's systems were a mess, but not beyond repair. "I can reroute power through the backup grid, but I need someone to manually reset the plasma flow regulators. They're in the lower engineering section." "That area has been breached," Zara said, studying the ship's schematics on a wall display. "Atmosphere is minimal, and the radiation levels are dangerous for humans. But not for Cytherians. My people evolved on a world with higher radiation levels. I can survive the exposure long enough to complete the repairs. She met his eyes. But I will need your guidance. Human technology still puzzles me in some ways. Working together, they'd managed to restore partial power to the ship. Zara's physical capabilities were remarkable. She could work in conditions that would kill a human and lift components that would require mechanical assistance for Marcus. But more than that, she was brilliant. She grasped the principles behind human engineering almost instantly and began suggesting improvements to their repair procedures. Your fusion containment system is remarkably elegant, she said as they worked to restart the main reactor. We have nothing quite like it. Different approaches to the same problem, Marcus replied, watching her delicate manipulation of the plasma injectors. Your ships use crystalline matrices for power storage, right? We always wondered how you kept them stable. Harmonic resonance, she said without thinking, then caught herself. I should not be sharing military secrets with the enemy. Are we enemies right now? Marcus asked quietly. Zara paused in her work, those mercury eyes studying his face in the console's glow. I am not certain what we are. The reactor came online with a satisfying hum, and lights began flickering on throughout the ship. Life support resumed its steady circulation, and the temperature began to rise slowly. They had bought themselves time, but they were far from safe. The pirates will be back, Marcus said as they made their way to the bridge. They'll want to board once they're sure we can't fight back. How many crew do you have? 4, counting me. Rodriguez is the captain, Walsh is our engineer, and Santos handles communications and sensors. Not exactly a military unit. Zara nodded thoughtfully. The pirates will expect easy prey. Cargo haulers typically carry minimal defensive systems. We've got some surprises, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. Mining ships need to deal with claim jumpers sometimes. They found Captain Rodriguez on the bridge, blood running down his face from a head wound, but still conscious. Santos was at her station, frantically trying to repair the communications array while keeping an eye on the sensor displays. Chen, thank God, Rodriguez said when he saw them. We've got 3 ships closing fast. Pirates for sure, based on their configuration. He noticed Zara, and his hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. What the hell is the prisoner doing loose? She helped us restore power, Marcus said quickly. Without her, we'd all be dead already. Santos looked up from her console, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Captain, I'm getting readings on more ships. Looks like a full pirate pack, maybe 8 or 9 vessels total. The tactical display painted a grim picture. The Horizon's call was surrounded, outgunned, and barely functional. Against a single pirate ship, they might have had a chance. Against 9, they were dead in space. They're hailing us, Santos reported. Put them through, Rodriguez ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was rough and amused. Cargo hauler Horizon's call. This is Captain Voss of the Free Trader Nebula's Edge. Here having some technical difficulties, I see. Lucky for you, we're feeling generous today. Stand down your defensive systems and prepare to be boarded. Cooperate, and you might live through this. Rodriguez looked at his tiny crew, then at the impossible odds on the tactical display. Options. We fight, Zara said simply. Your ship may be damaged, but it still has weapons, and I suspect your cargo hold contains more than just processed minerals. She was right. Hidden among the legitimate cargo were several crates of military-grade equipment bound for the frontier colonies. Weapons, armor, and tactical gear that could turn a crew of civilians into something resembling a fighting force. The hold is sealed, Rodriguez said. Even if we could access the military hardware, we don't have the training to use it effectively. I do, Zara said quietly. 12 years of war have taught both our species much about combat. I can train your crew to fight, but we will need time. Marcus looked at the sensor display. The pirate ships were moving into boarding positions, taking their time now that their prey was helpless. How much time do we need? Give me 4 hours and I can make warriors of you all, Zara said with quiet confidence. But you must trust me completely, and you must be willing to do whatever is necessary to survive." Rodriguez studied the Cytherean woman for a long moment. Everything about their situation violated protocol, military law, and common sense. But common sense wouldn't save them from pirates, and protocol was a luxury they couldn't afford. "Santos, send a message to the pirates. Tell them our primary systems are down, and we need time to restore life support before we can safely open the hatches. Buy us as much time as possible. And if they don't believe us, then we'll find out just how good our new combat instructor really is." As the crew prepared for what might be their final battle, Marcus found himself stealing glances at Zara. She moved with lethal grace, her enhanced senses constantly monitoring their surroundings. But there was something else there too. Something that looked almost like hope. "Why are you helping us?" he asked during a brief pause in their preparations. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she said, "Because for the first time in 12 years of war, I have met humans who treated me as more than an enemy to be destroyed. Perhaps it is time to discover what else we might be to each other." The words hung in the recycled air between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Outside the ship, the pirates waited with patience born of absolute confidence in their victory. But inside the Horizon's call, something new was being born. Something that might change the course of the war itself, if they could survive the next few hours. The first test would come soon enough. Beyond the void. The cargo hold of the Horizon's call had been transformed into an impromptu armory and training ground. Zara moved between the crew members with the fluid precision of a master instructor, her hands adjusting their grips on pulse rifles and checking the fit of tactical armor that had never been meant for human bodies. Marcus watched her work with growing amazement. The woman who had been their prisoner hours ago was now their salvation, turning a crew of civilian cargo handlers into something that might actually survive a pirate boarding action. "Your stance is too rigid," she told Santos, gently repositioning the communications officer's feet. "Human joints are more flexible than ours. Use that advantage. Flow with the weapon's recoil instead of fighting it." Santos nodded nervously, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air. "I've never shot at a person before." "Today you shoot at pirates who would murder you without hesitation," Zara replied with quiet intensity. "Remember that when the time comes to pull the trigger." Captain Rodriguez was proving surprisingly adept with the military-grade equipment. His 20 years of service on merchant vessels had included more than a few encounters with hostile forces, and his hands moved with practiced efficiency as he checked the charge on a plasma grenade. "These are serious weapons," he muttered. "What were they really sending to the frontier colonies?" "Probably better we don't ask," Marcus said, hefting an assault rifle that felt surprisingly balanced in his hands. "The colonies have been reporting increased Cytherean raids lately. Command must have decided they needed better gear." Zara's expression darkened at the mention of her people's military operations. "The raids are not sanctioned by the High Command. Rogue elements seeking glory and profit. They shame the warrior's code." "You disapprove?" Rodriguez asked. "I disapprove of unnecessary killing," she said simply. "War should be fought between warriors, not inflicted upon civilians who cannot defend themselves." Her words carried a weight that suggested personal experience with the subject. Marcus found himself wondering what she had seen in 12 years of conflict, what battles she had fought, and what choices she had been forced to make. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention Horizon's call. Your time is up. Open your docking bays and prepare for inspection." Rodriguez moved to the comm panel. "Nebula's edge. We're still working on restoring full atmospheric pressure. Give us another hour." "You've got 10 minutes, came the harsh reply. "Then we start cutting our way in." Zara nodded grimly. "It is time." The next few minutes passed in a blur of final preparations. They took positions throughout the ship, using the cargo hauler's layout to their advantage. The pirates would expect to find cowering civilians, not a coordinated defense force armed with military-grade weapons. Marcus found himself positioned in the main corridor leading from the primary docking port, his pulse rifle trained on the sealed hatch. Beside him, Walsh crouched behind a makeshift barricade, his head still bandaged from the earlier explosion, but his hand steady on his weapon. "Contact," Santos' voice whispered through their comm units. "3 ships moving into docking position. I count at least 20 boarders." The sound of cutting tools echoed through the hull as the pirates began their forced entry. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs, and he could taste copper fear in his mouth. This was nothing like the simulations or the training scenarios Zora had put them through. "Remember," Zora's voice came through their earpieces, calm and steady as carved stone. "They expect prey. Show them predators." The main hatch exploded inward with a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The first pirate through the breach was a massive human in makeshift armor, a plasma cutter in one hand and a pistol in the other. His confident grin vanished when Marcus's rifle bolt took him center mass. The corridor erupted into chaos as more pirates poured through the breach. They had expected easy pickings, not disciplined defensive fire from prepared positions. 3 more went down before they could find cover, and suddenly the boarders found themselves trapped in a kill zone with nowhere to run. "Fall back," someone screamed over the sound of weapons fire. "They're armed." But Zora was already moving. She appeared behind the pirates like a silver-haired ghost, her stolen pirate weapon cutting through their rear guard with surgical precision. Caught between 2 fires, the boarding party lasted less than 2 minutes. "Docking port 1 secured," Rodriguez reported. "Nice work, everyone." But their celebration was premature. The remaining pirate ships had heard the gunfire. And they weren't amateurs. The second boarding attempt came simultaneously from 3 different access points, coordinated and overwhelming. The battle raged through the ship's corridors for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Marcus found himself back-to-back with Zora at one point, their weapons covering different approaches as pirates tried to flank their position. "Having fun yet?" he gasped during a brief lull in the fighting. "Your species has an odd definition of entertainment," she replied. But he caught the hint of a smile in her voice. They were holding their own, but barely. The pirates had numbers and experience, while the cargo crew had better weapons and the advantage of fighting on familiar ground. It might have been enough, except for one critical factor: ammunition. "I'm down to my last power cell," Santos reported over the comm. "Same here," Walsh added. "These military weapons eat energy like crazy." Marcus checked his own rifle's charge, less than 20% remaining. They had put up a good fight, but it was about to be over. "There's another weapons cache in Storage Bay 7, Rodriguez said, "if we can reach it." "Negative," Zara interrupted. "Too far and too many pirates between us and there. We need another solution." That's when the pirates made their final mistake. Instead of continuing their careful advance, they rushed the bridge all at once, thinking the defenders were finished. What they found was Zora waiting for them. Marcus had seen her fight before, but this was different. This was a Catharian fleet commander in full battle mode, moving with inhuman speed and precision. She flowed between the pirates like liquid death, her captured weapons cutting through them with devastating efficiency. When the silence finally fell, 8 pirates lay dead around the bridge, and Zara stood in the center like an avenging angel. Her gray prisoner clothing was torn and bloodied, but she was uninjured. "Is everyone all right?" she asked, as calmly as if she had just finished a routine maintenance check. The crew stared at her in shock and awe. They had seen the intelligence reports about Catharian combat capabilities, but witnessing it firsthand was something else entirely. "Remind me never to get on your bad side," Marcus said finally. The remaining pirate ships withdrew after losing half their boarding parties. Apparently, a cargo hauler that fought back this effectively wasn't worth the cost in ships and crew. Within an hour, the Horizon's call was alone again in the asteroid field. "So what now?" Rodriguez asked as they gathered on the bridge. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications that went far beyond their immediate situation. Zara stood apart from the human crew, her alien features unreadable in the bridge lighting. She had saved their lives, but she was still technically their prisoner. The war between their species continued to rage across the galaxy, and she was a high-value enemy combatant. The right thing would be to deliver you to the authorities as planned, Rodriguez said quietly. But after what you did for us, I am still a warrior of the Catherian Empire, Zara said. My loyalty has not changed, but perhaps my understanding has. Marcus stepped forward. What if there was another option? What if you didn't have to go back to the war? You speak of desertion. I speak of choosing a different path. There are neutral worlds, places where humans and Catherians could coexist, places where you could be free. Zara's silver eyes searched his face. And you would abandon your duty to help me reach such a place. Some things are more important than duty. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Outside the viewports, stars wheeled in their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of the small beings who dared to travel between them. There is a research station in the Veil Nebula, Santos said suddenly. Independent, neutral. They study xenobiology and cultural exchange. People from all species work there together. Rodriguez nodded slowly. It would mean changing course, missing our delivery deadline. The company would ask questions. The company can bill me for the delay, Marcus said. This is more important than profit margins. Zara watched this exchange with growing wonder. These humans were willing to sacrifice their careers, their futures, to give her a chance at freedom. It was a gesture that challenged everything she had been taught about human nature. Why? She asked. Why would you do this for me? Marcus stepped closer, and for a moment the rest of the crew seemed to fade away. Because in the last few hours, fighting beside you, I've seen who you really are. Not a Catherian warrior or an enemy soldier, but just you. And I think there could be something amazing between us if we had the chance to find out. The confession hung in the recycled air between them. Zara's expression shifted, silver eyes reflecting emotions that had no names in either language. The war, she began, will continue with or without us, Marcus finished. But maybe somewhere in the galaxy, two people from different worlds can prove that peace is possible. Zara reached out slowly, as if afraid he might vanish like a dream. Her fingers touched his face with feather-like gentleness, and Marcus felt something electric pass between them. I have spent my life serving the Empire, she whispered. Perhaps it is time to discover what it means to serve my own heart. The journey to the Veil Nebula took 3 weeks. During that time, Marcus and Zara grew closer in ways that transcended species and culture. They shared stories of their homeworlds, taught each other their languages, and discovered that the barriers between them were largely artificial. Zara proved to be brilliant, funny, and surprisingly gentle despite her warrior training. She had never experienced the simple pleasure of choosing her own path, and she embraced freedom with the enthusiasm of someone discovering color after a lifetime of seeing only gray. Marcus found himself falling in love, not just with her exotic beauty, but with her mind and spirit. She challenged him to think beyond the narrow confines of human experience, while he showed her the joy that could be found in small, everyday moments. The research station welcomed them with open arms. It was exactly what Santos had described, a place where beings from across the galaxy worked together toward common goals. Humans, Catherians, and a dozen other species collaborated on projects that might eventually help end the war through understanding rather than victory. We can offer you both positions, the station director explained. Your combat experience would be valuable in our conflict resolution studies, and Marcus's engineering background is always needed. Standing on the observation deck of their new home, watching the nebula's colorful gases swirl in patterns of impossible beauty, Marcus and Zara contemplated their future together. Do you regret it? Marcus asked. Leaving everything behind. Zara leaned against him, her tall frame fitting perfectly against his smaller one. I have gained far more than I lost. For the first time in my life, I am free to choose my own destiny. And I choose you. They were married in a ceremony that blended human and Cytherian traditions, witnessed by friends from a dozen different worlds. Their love story became something of a legend on the station, proof that understanding could bridge even the greatest divides. Years later, when historians wrote about the events that eventually led to peace between humanity and the Cytherian Empire, they would note the importance of cultural exchange programs and diplomatic initiatives. But those who knew the truth understood that sometimes the greatest changes begin with two people from different worlds discovering that love knows no boundaries. The war did eventually end, not through conquest, but through gradual understanding. And in a small research station in the Veil Nebula, a human engineer and a Cytherian warrior continued to prove that the most powerful force in the universe isn't hatred or fear, but the courage to reach across the void and touch another soul. Their ship had broken down in the cold depths of space, but they had found something far more valuable than any cargo. They had found each other. And in finding each other, they had discovered that the universe was far less lonely than either had ever dared to hope.